Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back for a Friday edition of the Steel City Sports Report, where we talk all things Steelers, Penguins, and Pirates. I'm your host, Brady Vini, and today's report includes: the Pittsburgh Steelers are happy where they are and are scared of change. Did a new spot in the NFL just open up for Russell Wilson? And the Pittsburgh Penguins defense collapses against the Anaheim Ducks. As always, please be sure to like, comment, and share this video, as well as subscribe to the channel. Now let's get into the first news story of the day. The Pittsburgh Steelers are happy where they are and are scared of change. In Pittsburgh, it can be said that the city goes how the Steelers go, and right now, the black and gold aren't going anywhere. Right now, there isn't a lot of hope for the Steelers because they are stuck in NFL purgatory. They aren't in the upper echelon of the league competing for the Super Bowl, and they aren't one of the bottom feeders who at least have the hopes of finding a franchise player high in the draft. Steelers Nation is begging for change, whether it be for better or worse, because 10-7 seasons with first-round playoff exits are keeping the Steelers in mediocrity. Unfortunately, it seems that those who are running the organization do not feel the same urge, according to the words of someone perceived to be in the Steelers' inner circle. On Wednesday, Jim Rooney, brother of Steelers owner Art Rooney, went on the Russ Talker Football podcast to talk about the black and gold. One of the questions that Jim Rooney was asked was what he thinks about Steelers fans who are upset with head coach Mike Tomlin and his lack of postseason success. Rooney said, I think it's an organization issue, not just Mike. I think all of us are responsible for the outcomes, and I think we take responsibility. I don't want to get into excuse making, but the reality is we outperform the NFL mean at a greater rate than just about any team for the last 25 years. Another team that has been in that category in terms of outperforming the mean has been the Ravens. So, when you look at the challenges we face, I think if this was a boxing match and you were judging the competition, not just looking at the winning percentage, you would have to say that we've performed in a harder circumstance than most, and we've outperformed them. Having said that, I understand no one wants to lose playoff games. The goal is to win the Super Bowl, and you have to get to playoffs, which we do well, and you have to win playoff games, which we haven't. The other excuse I'll make there is we've lost some bad playoff games. We also lost to three guys that have some pretty unique names: Manning, Brady, and Mahomes. So again, I don't want to make any excuses, but I also think if you make an argument, you should look at the facts in the matter, and I think the Steelers organization, Mike Tomlin, have outperformed any expectations you could have for any NFL team in terms of who they have to play against, what the competition looks like, etc. Following that, Rooney was also asked what Steelers fans would probably feel if the organization did make changes and went through a rebuild, saying, "They'll burn the city down if we go 3-13 for 3 years in a row, but that's generally how you get one of those top guys. I mean, occasionally you get lucky, and occasionally you make the right trade decision, but there's more examples of not getting lucky and not making the right trade." Again, I don't want to make any excuses, but it's an interesting dilemma, and I would rather have Art and Mike and Omar, the guys in charge, trying to solve it than the opposite. Alright, there was a lot to unpack there, but let's break down these answers bit by bit. 1. I love how Rooney said that everyone in the organization takes responsibility for the team losing, and then in the very next sentence said, I don't want to get into excuse making, but... When someone says, I don't want to make excuses, that means that they are about to make excuses. That right there made his "we take responsibility" claim null and void. 2. Rooney said that the Steelers have outperformed the mean more than any team over the last 25 years. For those who don't know, mean is defined as the average of the given collection of data. Congratulations, that means that the Steelers have been slightly above average for a quarter century. Oh, and you want to drag the Ravens down to your level and make it seem like you two are equals? No, you're not. Sure, the Steelers have had their fair share of success against the Rappers, but don't act like they don't way outperform your mean versus bigger competition. 3. Don't say you've outperformed in these harder circumstances. If getting blown out each and every time you run into a team like Kansas City or Buffalo is outperforming, then you might as well concede any game against an opponent with a better record than you from here on out. I actually can't remember the last time the Steelers won a game in which they were clearly the underdog, and it looks like I'll be waiting for that to happen for a while longer. 4. As for Rooney's excuse of playing against guys like Tom Brady and Peyton Manning and Patrick Mahomes, don't forget, Jim, you had one of those top guys who wore number 7. Don't act like you were trotting out a team of scrubs back then, and don't cry now because your brother and everyone else botched the quarterback succession plan after Ben retired. 5. Saying that the Steelers have outperformed expectations of any NFL team going up against the competition that they have is a true lowering of the standard. You aren't any NFL team. You're the damn Pittsburgh Steelers. What you've done over the better part of the last decade is exceeding expectations, if you're the Carolina Panthers or New York Giants. Instead of being the golden standard around the league, the Steelers have become a stepping stone and a shell of what they once were. 6. Saying that us fans will burn the city down if we went 3-13 for a few years shows just how out of touch you are with the fan base. Do you remember how the Steelers dynasty of the 70s was built, and how the Steelers found their franchise quarterback in Ben Roethlisberger? Yeah, right. You gotta fall off the bike a few times in order to win the Tour de France. I guarantee you half of the fan base, maybe even more, would in their heart of hearts be fine sucking for a few years because we know what eventually is on the other side. And finally, 7. Calling the Steelers' current state an interesting dilemma, but saying you want to keep the guys currently in charge to lead the way out is hilarious. It makes perfect sense that the guys who dug this organization into a hole are somehow going to dig them out. Putting everything I just said into a nutshell, assuming that Jim Rooney is at least a tiny bit in the inner circle of what goes on inside the Steelers building, changes are not coming. There will be no changes to organizational philosophy, there will be no changes to those steering the ship, and most importantly, there will be no change in results on the field. One of the best franchises in the NFL, scared to go off into the wilderness of uncertainty, risk, and change, has no longer put winning championships first. They have settled for being just good enough to make a profit and not win the big one. It pains me to say this, ladies and gentlemen, but your Pittsburgh Steelers have become the Pittsburgh Pirates. Did a new spot in the NFL just open up for Russell Wilson? Looking around the NFL, I can't find many, if any, teams that have a clear opening for quarterback Russell Wilson to be a starter next season. As of right now, returning to Pittsburgh, should the Steelers even want him back, is Wilson's best shot at competing for another starting gig. That was the only scenario, up until a few hours ago. Breaking news came down this morning from ESPN NFL insider Adam Schefter that the Las Vegas Raiders have hired former Seattle Seahawks head coach Pete Carroll as their new head coach. Carroll was Wilson's head coach up in Seattle from 2012 through 2021. In those 10 seasons together, the head coach and quarterback duo had a 104, 53-1 record, clinching 4 division titles, going to 2 Super Bowls, and winning one in 2014. Russ was traded from Seattle to the Denver Broncos in 2022, and Carroll was fired by the Seahawks a year later in 2023, but the two have reportedly always kept a good relationship. What could make reuniting with his old head coach out in Vegas even more appealing for Wilson is that the Raiders are currently picking 6th in this year's NFL draft, making them selecting a quarterback with other QB-needy teams in front of them uncertain. At the very least, Wilson can be a starter and a mentor for a drafted quarterback out in Vegas, rather than sit behind what will probably be Justin Fields as the starter here in Pittsburgh. What do you guys think of this development? Do you think Russ will be lured out to Sin City, or do you think he will stay true to his word about wanting to retire in the Burgh? Let me know in the comments below. And finally, the Pittsburgh Penguins defense collapses against the Anaheim Ducks. I'm going to try to make this as short and sweet as possible. Last night, the Pittsburgh Penguins had a golden opportunity, with some of the other teams in the Eastern Conference losing, to jump back into the wildcard race. Instead of continuing the momentum from beating a good Los Angeles Kings team on Monday night, the Pens have probably one of their worst defensive games of the season, losing to the Anaheim Ducks 5-1. Rather than do a period-by-period breakdown, because honestly, they all were the same, here's what happened. The theme of the night was the Pens' offense snapping the puck around extremely well and getting bunches of scoring chances. However, they couldn't figure out Ducks goaltender John Gibson, who played out of his mind, and his performance gave Anaheim life. When the Pens couldn't finish, the Ducks went the other way, making the Penguins' defense look silly, and they rarely missed their scoring chances. And yeah, that's pretty much it. The Penguins have a knack of sometimes making the bad teams look like juggernauts, and that's exactly what happened here. Actually, I blame the core 3 of Crosby, Malkin, and Letang for going against their superstitions and wearing no helmets in warm-ups last night. Last night's loss now puts the Pens at 2-2 on this long road trip with 3 games to go. Their upcoming 3 games are also versus 4 opponents, so if the Pens come up short of winning each of these 3 games, then I'm not being dramatic when I say you can probably stick a knife in the Pittsburgh Penguins 2024-25 season. The first of the final 3 games is this Saturday in a late afternoon matchup against the Seattle Kraken at 4 p.m. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, that wraps up a Friday edition of the Steel City Sports Report. Again, please be sure to like, comment, and share this video, as well as subscribe to the channel. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you guys back here on Monday with some more Pittsburgh sports news.